Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lightworkers. Today we have with us Sonali. She's a dear old friend and she is stepped into the world of yoga kind of full time now, Sonali. Yeah. So I was so intrigued and excited and I wanted to bring her on the show and talk all about it. So welcome Sonali, how are you?
Good. This is the first time I'm on a podcast, so a little nervous, but I'm excited to have this conversation. And I'm so excited to talk to you again after so many years.
Yeah, yeah. So Sonali, why don't you tell people a little bit about your journey into yoga, maybe how it happened and how now you're moving full time into it, whatever that means to you.
Yeah. So I started doing yoga. It's a little weirdly. People usually, they hear about it and then they decide they want to do yoga. But for me, it was like a kida that just like overnight just settled in my brain. And I think it was because I used to go shopping to this organic store near my house. And on the way back, there was this Gurudwara where there was a yoga class happening. So I used to see that board every time. And then something happened to me. I was around 23 or ish. And I just felt like, no, I have to go to that yoga class. And it was bizarre because nobody around me was doing it. And this was before yoga was a fad in India. And it's so sad that it's a borrowed fad, like the West picked it up and then we got it back from them. And it's so twisted, the yoga that we see these days. Sometimes we can
Yeah.
talk about it. But yeah, so something happened. I was like, I should do yoga. And then I started going to this Gurudwara, and everybody was like, middle aged aunties. And then this me, like scrawny little, like 20 something. And I'm doing yoga with them. And it was like super easy, like breezy yoga. But as soon as I started doing it, only I realized, oh my God, like this is something, I don't know what it is, but it's something powerful. And
Mm.
I started to experience things. And but at that time, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have a frame of reference, nothing. I didn't even grow up in like a household where traditional concepts were taught to you. So I had a very westernized upbringing. My ideas were very Western. And so something like this was completely out of syllabus. I didn't know what was going on. All I knew was I have to keep doing it.
Mm.
And that it was like this like subconscious like urge, this like compulsion that I have to go to yoga class, come what may, rain or sun. And I used to do all sorts of things just to get to class. Uh, like even if you're young, you sleep late, friends come over, all of that. I used to sleep like at 3 a.m. I would still wake up at 6 a.m. so I could go to that yoga class at 7 a.m. Like I would make sure that I go to the class. Yeah, I'll come back and take a 2 hour nap, but I still go to that class. It became
Mm.
like that. Yeah, yoga does that to you. So that
Wow.
was how it started.
So you
Yeah,
were
and then
just sorry, you were just pulled
mhm.
to it, huh? Without even knowing what it was. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what yoga was. I hadn't done it before. I hadn't even watched like on TV. You see, who's that?
Yeah. Baba
Teacher who
Ramdev.
comes
Yeah.
and does nowadays. He's popular, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Baba Ramdev. I didn't even like used to watch any of that or anything. I don't know how it happened. There is one explanation, but that's the only explanation that I can think of.
Wow. Yeah. Go ahead. You were saying something. Forgot.
Yeah, and then after that it just that I just went deeper and deeper into it, either consciously or unconsciously. Like I used to go, like I said, religiously to class, but I was still dependent on this teacher. And going to the class, I didn't know how to practice on my own. And then I had to move to the US, and I knew that like I can't rely on teachers over there. So I said, you know what, I have to like study, take this course, intensive course, so that I'm able to practice on my own. So I went and did a teacher training course at the Shivananda ashram in Madurai. And it was completely on a whim. Like somebody told me go to Shivananda. Like I hadn't even heard of them. And then during that course, I realized what yoga really is. That's when I knew it's a spiritual practice. Till then, I was getting little inklings, but it was all like at the back of my mind. And there were little hints here and there, and I hadn't pieced it all together. But when I went there, that's when during the course I realized, okay, this is a solid spiritual practice. It's
Mm.
not a physical exercise like going to tennis class and coming back. It's not like that at all. It's something extremely powerful. Yeah, that was the realization I had. And since then, I've just been going deeper and deeper into it. And it's come to a point in my life where it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I'm like wasting my time if I do something else.
Wow. I'm myself just delving deeper into, different aspects of yoga, not just the physical part, which people sort of just know about yoga, it seems, right? Like just generally. So do you want to talk a little more about the Ashtanga yoga, or like, what is the spiritual practice that you got, were introduced to?
Okay, so I started out by doing asana. So that's a good question. When we say yoga, we often just think of asanas, right? And that's definitely a part of yoga, but there's a lot more to yoga. So generally speaking, if we were to look at yoga comprehensively, then we
Yeah.
can divide it into eight angas, eight parts or limbs. Angas are limbs,
Mm-hmm.
and so they actually there's a hierarchy to it, and you have to start out with the first, and then move on, graduate to the second and the third, as you go deeper and deeper into the practice, and as you evolve spiritually as well. So I don't remember. I should, but I don't remember them off the top of my head. So I made
Mm-hmm.
some notes, and
Yeah.
I'm going to refer to them.
Okay.
So there are eight, right? So the first two are Yama and Niyama. I don't know if you heard of this
Yeah.
before? Yeah. So there are different ways that people translate what they mean in English, and it's quite contentious actually. But then
Yeah.
at the risk of being trolled, I will say Yama means things that you should abstain from, and Niyamas are things that you should do. Okay, so yamas and niyamas, there are five of each. Okay, so yamas, there are five, and they are, the first one is ahimsa. Okay,
Yeah.
so not harming others, uh, either in deed or thought or word. Okay, um, but that doesn't mean don't defend yourself. So people
Yeah.
mistake that a lot. People say, oh, but we are actually peace loving people and stuff. Yes, we love peace, but if somebody comes and attacks us, it's our dharma to defend ourselves, right? So yes, so it actually goes much deeper than this. People are just, nowadays, our generation, we're quite ignorant.
Mm.
Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is satya, truthfulness. And yeah, so truthfulness at any cost to oneself. It's very hard to do. We can
Mm.
be brutally honest to other people as long as it's hurting their feelings, not ours. But when it comes to something that's inconvenient to us, then it's so easy to tell a lie, right? Just feel like that. It's like totally natural. It's like self-preservation almost. But it's not. And so if you're following the yogic path, then you have to do this hard thing, which is always speak the truth at all times, at any cost to oneself. Of course, when it comes to protecting others, like if you need to lie in order to protect someone and prevent harm from befalling them, then you may have to tell a lie here and there, but that also is contextual, and that is so that ahimsa happens to that person, right? So it's
Yeah.
actually very nuanced and very complicated. That's why we have so many texts in Vedanta and in yoga philosophizing about this. We
Yeah.
have the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, which is, such a solid text which teaches us how to navigate dharma, what is karma, and what's the meaning of all these interpersonal relationships. It's such a solid like guide. So that's the second yama. And the third one is ashteya, which is non-stealing. So
Mm-hmm.
we know, don't take another person's pencil or eraser. We know that. But we do other forms of stealing, like we steal resources by colonizing other people, and then there's disparity in society. So some people get paid more than some others for the same kind of labor, the same amount of labor, right? And then we also steal people's time, right?
Mm-hmm.
In so many ways, like sometimes we are frustrated, and then we steal people's time, we steal people's energy as well. So there are many forms of stealing that are not simply don't go and steal that person's wallet. So yeah, these are subtler things that you have to live by.
Yeah.
And then there's brahmacharya, which it can be construed as celibacy, yes, but it's also um, linked to using your energy more judiciously.
Mm.
So not exposing yourself to too much of stuff that takes you away from your path. Being very mindful of what you consume, who you associate with, what you do with your time, what you do with your energy. So that's brahmacharya.
Mm.
Unfortunately, when we hear brahmachari, we think, oh, that's a celibate person. Yes,
Yeah.
they probably are celibate, but brahmacharya is a lot more. Even people who are married can be brahmacharyas. Like, they can choose to only be with that person. So all their energies are with that person. And so that's also a form of brahmacharya, because I'm being mindful about where I'm going to put my romantic energy or whatever energy, right? So
Mm.
I'm in that sense, I'm being mindful. So that's also a form of brahmacharya. So you
Mm-hmm.
can define it depending on the context of your life. Not everyone can be a yogi who's,
Yeah.
renounced the world and gone off. So, I mean, Krishna, we're talking about Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna is a great example. He was a king, he was a warrior, and still he's the greatest yogi.
Yeah.
So you can live in the world, you can participate in the world, and you can still practice all of these things. You just have to contextualize it to your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then
So,
the next one is up. Yeah, go on. What's the
do you
question?
call yourself a yogi?
Good question. um, I don't. Okay, and this is a trend. Like, I used to live in the US, and oh my god, anyone who goes to yoga class calls themselves a yogi. No, you're not a yogi. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So we are all yoga practitioners, but a true yogi is somebody, and Krishna defines it in Bhagavad Gita. A true yogi is somebody who is able to be in complete equanimity.
Mm.
None of us can say that about ourselves. In any given situation, you are completely equanimous. Okay, and that kind of detachment is what we aspire for as yoga practitioners. But only a yogi has accomplished it. So once you accomplish that state, then you are called a yogi.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Mm.
so we are simply practitioners. So don't go around calling yourself a yogi. You're just like diluting the true meaning of that word.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah.
answers
Yeah.
your, yeah. That's why when you
So,
asked me earlier also, I was like, you should ask this while we're recording, because a lot of people call themselves that, and it's like, no, dude, you're not a yogi. You're just practicing. Like, be humble.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I really wanted to ask you because I guess here, and I know we are on this process of the Ashtanga, but I just wanted to like deviate a bit. Even here in the US, I think everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people feel that yoga is like, doing exercises, right? And there is this
Yeah.
deep, practice, and there is so much that goes in mentally as well, or emotionally and spiritually that I think people are just not aware about. And it's interesting to see, even if somebody's calling themselves yogi without even knowing that part, it's like a big lie, right? So it's good to talk about that.
Yeah, today on Instagram, I saw this post by this lady. I'm guessing she's in the US, and she had this long write up about how earlier she was very rigid because she only referred to the texts, and she thought only what's in the Yoga Sutras or in the Vedas and all of that is yoga. but actually, yoga is a living, thriving, dynamic process, and so we can make yoga be whatever we want. And she was doing all sorts of yin yoga and that yoga and this yoga and all, and she was like, but I draw the line at beer yoga and wine yoga and goat yoga, okay. And I was just like,
Right.
oh my god. Yes, yoga is a living, thriving process, but you are not a yogi girl. Only a yogi can determine what yoga is. So be
Yeah.
humble and like admit that you don't know, and you're just learning. You're simply living your life, learning and growing. Just admit
Yeah.
that and be in that space,
Yeah.
instead of trying to change the meanings of things that you don't know about.
So can
So
yoga be, it's
somebody,
a, sorry,
hmm,
go ahead.
hmm. Yeah, somebody who's not read the Vedas is saying, forget the Vedas. Like, that's
Hmm.
quite funny.
So you're saying it is like you have to go through the whole thing to understand the concept, right? But it is an interesting question. All these versions that are cropping up, like, what are they? Like, are they also yoga or like I don't know, this goat yoga, whatever that is. But what is it like?
So from what I've seen, I've not been to a goat yoga class, but from what I've seen, they like do yoga asanas and then goat, like baby goats. What are they called? Kids. Kids are like roaming around them and stuff. So it's like supposed to be cute and fun. And then beer
Mm.
yoga, wine yoga, they're like intoxicating themselves while doing asanas.
Okay.
So yeah, that's quite funny too.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so there's all this like Bikram yoga, hot yoga, and all of that stuff, acro yoga, and all of that, right? Um, is it yoga? That's a good question. I've been to an acro yoga class, and it was just acrobatics with like some of the yoga asanas incorporated in it, but like you're not holding the asanas, and you're not like, you know
Mm.
it's you're not getting the benefit of the asana. You're just assuming that posture while you're like changing to another posture. So the meaning of asana is a steady and comfortable pose. So
Right.
you have to hold that pose steadily for a while. That is called an asana. So if you just like, so so they can't be called yoga asanas if you're moving, because the definition of an asana is a steady and comfortable posture or a pose. So you
Mm.
have to hold that pose steadily for a period of time. Only then will you get the benefits of that asana. So some asanas, they are good for your thyroid glands, for instance. Some of them are
Mm.
good for your digestive system. Some of them are good for your lower back. So if you just like go into that posture and then move into another one, like in the gym, like we do repetitions, right? We do reps of sit-ups and pull-ups and push-ups. So if you do asana like that, you're not going to get the benefit. You have to go into that posture and stay in that posture, and then like you release. Like if you're doing something like sarvangasana, which is the shoulder stand, then you're contracting this part of your neck where your thyroid glands are, and so you're going to like stimulate those glands, and when you
Mm.
stimulate them, they start functioning properly, and then they give a immense uh, physical benefits. But then if you just go into that posture and then change immediately, you're not going to get that effect. So that part
Mm.
is very important in doing an asana. So even though people think yoga is asanas, I often see that people don't know what it actually is. So
Mm.
it's very important. I mean, nowadays it's quite fashionable to say that, like, be rebellious and say, I'm going to define what this is. I'm going to define, let's change the definition, let's smash this and that. But then there are some things that you first need to understand. You need to learn it properly before you can decide whether you want to change it or not. You may
Mm.
find once you get into it that there's no need to change it at all, that it's giving you everything you need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, just going back to sorry, you were saying something? Yeah.
Yeah. So the yamas and niyamas that I mentioned, I'm still talking about yamas, but I mentioned yamas and niyamas. And after yamas and niyamas is asana. Okay. So like I said, there's a hierarchy, right? You go from one to another step by step. So actually you may be doing asanas, like you may be going to yoga class and everything, and regularly, and you're feeling like you're getting biceps, and you're standing tall and all of, you're seeing those effects. But then if you don't live your life according to yamas and niyamas, then the first two steps, then you're not going to get the full benefits of asanas. You're not going to. So if you continue to live unconsciously, then you're not, there's no point in really, you might as well go to the gym.
Right.
So the real benefit of asanas comes when you live your life in a certain way, following certain principles.
Yeah.
Then you're on the path of yoga.
Mm. It's so interesting, Sonali, because
Am I
I
breaking
mean,
off?
you kind of froze, but now I can see you. But growing up
Okay.
in India, I mean, I've never even heard of Yama Niyama before, like we've heard of yoga and we've heard of asanas, but I mean, maybe I was too, I don't know, insulated or whatever. But now that I'm exploring all of this, like people maybe are living so unconsciously that we're not even registering. So this is the important part that was like a prerequisite to the asanas. Yeah, yeah.
It's not about living unconsciously. I think we should give ourselves some grace, because history was not very kind to our culture, our recent history. The last few hundred years of our past, we were colonized and we were invaded, and all of those things happened. And so it was not conducive to maintain. I mean, our only way to survive was to let go of our knowledge systems and adapt to whatever was being given to us.
Mm,
And so we did what we needed to as a civilization to survive. But I think that we are in a transition place right now where we no longer need to do that to survive. We have the freedom and the power to empower ourselves to thrive. And so now I think this is the time is right for us as a generation to go back to our roots and see what our ancestors did and have to share with us. And really, that legacy is so powerful. We see yoga affecting people's lives
mm-hmm.
everywhere, all over the world. Diseases are being cured, people are healthy, people are happy. And this is like the basic minimum that yoga does. It actually goes so deep. And we have so much to share with the world, and we should first empower ourselves, and then we can help the world.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's something I really believe.
yeah. So what after asana?
Yeah, so after Okay, so we were talking about asanas. So yamas and niyamas, we'll get back to that. It's like it goes little deeper than that, but we'll get back to it. We'll go forward from asanas now. So asana, I told you, was the third anga, right? The third limb, and then the fourth limb is actually pranayama. Have you heard of this?
Yes. Yeah. I was going to ask you, but
Yeah.
then I was like, it is part of the Ashtanga, so you'll come here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pranayama, people call it breath work. I think breath work has some other techniques as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you can call it that. And then I sometimes I see articles where like like Western medicine is discovering the benefits of breath work and stuff, and they're not even crediting yoga for it. And I see people like, yoga practitioners, they're enraged by this. They're like, hello, like you have to
Yeah.
credit where you're getting this from so people know where to go to learn all of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, pranayama is like working with the breath. Prana means, actually, prana is a non-translatable. Indians know what prana is. In all our languages, we have prana. But in English, there's no direct word for prana. I guess an equivalent would be life force. Uh,
Right.
so So yeah, when the prana exits the body, we know that the person, we say that the person is dead. They have left the body, right? So prana is the life force that's coursing through our body and makes everything work.
So,
Um,
Sonali, one question. So, I think I was trying to explain this to a person who doesn't have context or doesn't understand the language. So, prana is basically when we inhale and we take in oxygen, we also are looking at like prana as chi energy, right? Or like they say in Chinese medicine. So that's like something that's not visible, but it's there in our life, in our body, or like
yes,
different meridians.
yes, yes. Chi, I think I've heard, I don't know, I haven't gone into Chinese medicine, but I've heard that chi is a good equivalent for prana.
Mm.
Yes, it is something that cannot be, it's not tangible. And modern science has not quite grasped it yet. They are not there yet. But prana is essential. Everything is prana. All the energy is prana.
Yeah.
So yeah, so pranayama is the practice of controlling and regulating the breath. Okay, so
Mm.
doing various pranayama techniques, yogic techniques, doing that helps you get control of your life energies. Okay, so
Mm.
it can be as simple as curing some ailments that you have, which pranayama has the power to do, just like asana. But it can also be like bringing your mind to a kind of an equilibrium. Our thoughts are can, especially the kinds of lives we lead where we live, all of that affects our minds, and our thoughts can sometimes be agitated, and that wastes a lot of our energy. And so pranayama helps to bring all of that into control, calm you down, and bring a balance between your left and your right, your ha and tha, your yin and yang energies. So yin and yang in yogic culture is ha and tha, and that's why it's called hatha yoga, our traditional classical form of yoga, hatha yoga, ha and tha, uh, left and right. Balancing those energies. So pranayama helps you balance that. Does a lot more, but this is the basic of it. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
very powerful. And so you should be practicing asanas before you graduate into practicing pranayama. You can do them both together in the same session, but you shouldn't ideally be doing pranayamas without asanas, because for pranayamas you should sit cross-legged with your spine straight and for a
Yeah.
prolonged period of time. And now that is not something that we can all do, considering like how we are used to. We'll either lying down or we're sitting somewhere, right? We're not, or we're running on a treadmill or whatever, but we're not used to sitting with our spine straight for a prolonged period of time without some back rest. And so if you do asanas, what you're doing is you're twisting the spine in all kinds of directions while doing asanas, and you're strengthening your muscles, your back muscles, your legs, you're improving the flexibility of your legs, your hips, all of those muscles. And so you're able to then, after prolonged asana practice, you're able to sit quietly without your body nagging you, so you can focus on just your breath. So
Yeah.
that's why pranayama asana is essential. It's like the foundation before you move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's the fourth one. Then you want to go to the fifth one?
Yeah.
Okay. So the fifth one is called pratyahara, which means withdrawal of the senses.
Mm.
Okay. So we have five senses. Yeah. I mean, people have sixth, seventh, eighth sense also, but we're talking about general common understanding of senses. We have five senses. And the thing is, as human beings, we're very much identified with those senses. What, like what I touch, what I see, what I taste, what I hear, that kind of defines me and shapes me and my idea of me as a human being. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, we know deep down that that's not me. That's just an accumulation of my environment, my surroundings, right? Just ideas that I heard or things that I saw, experiences that I had through my senses. They tend to accumulate over time and condition you into behaving in certain patterns. And we mistake that for me. We think I am
Mm.
this, but I am not that. That is and I'm simply identifying with it, right? So we want to break that identification. We want to break it, and we want to go in and we want to see, what am I then? If none of what I hear, none of what I've seen, none of what I've experienced is me, then what am I? So the whole yogic practice is answering this question: who am I? That's the fundamental question, right? Every question, if you follow it to its logical end, will end up in this fundamental question: who am I? So yoga helps you answer that question through all of these practices. So pratyahara is withdrawal of the senses. So we can do it figuratively by making sure that we don't, Gandhiji had that see no evil, speak no evil, all of that stuff. So you can do it figuratively like that, and somehow then like cleanse your life out of things that you don't want to associate with. But then yogis also do it physically. Okay, so if you see a yogi who is in samadhi, in deep meditation, then you see that like he's not hearing, he's not perceiving anything through his senses. He's just completely gone, or she has completely gone inwards. Okay, and like you snap your fingers, they won't respond. So I think this is Jaggi Vasudev, who people call Sadguru. I remember reading something about something that he narrated. Some scientists came, and they've been doing this for like a century now. So they plug in all those things to the yogis to see the nerve impulses, to see how they're behaving when they're meditating and all of that. And so they did that to him. They plugged him in, and they were monitoring his impulses and nerve activity. And they said, okay, now you go into meditation. Let's see what happens. Okay. And then he said, I went into meditation. And then after some time, I started to feel a pain in my knee. And then he's like, then I was like, okay, I came out of meditation. And then I realized they're hitting my knee with a hammer. And he's like, why are you hitting me? And they said, but the machines told us you were dead. We were not getting any signals. And so we were hitting your knee to see, they do that when you go to the doctor's office. They do it to check your
Reflex.
what's it called, reflex action. And so they were doing that experiment on him, and he was just not responding. And so they started hitting harder. So he had withdrawn his senses. Okay, so obviously, I can't do that. So I would never call myself a yogi because I can't do things like that.
Yeah.
It's just like they sound like miracles.
And Sonali,
Yeah.
how does that happen? Like with breath, with like you kind of gain the power of the body in a way where you can kind of do that internally?
You actually become very sensitive to energy, and you realize that even when you're looking at something, how do you perceive that thing? You are touching something energetically with your eyes. When you hear something, some energy is coming to your ears and you're perceiving it, right? So you start to become more and more sensitive to subtler and subtler things. If on a normal basis we only see tangible physical objects as real, we don't think of subtler things like energy as real. A little bit of perception we do have, but then the more you practice yoga, the more sensitive you become to these things. And so you're able to then control your how you engage with the environment a lot more. So that's what we say when people are unconscious. We say that they're behaving unconsciously because they are not able to control how they engage with their environment, how they perceive the environment. But with more and more yoga practice, the deeper you get into it, the situation can be anything, but how you perceive it, how you engage with it, that's something you begin to have more and more control over. And that's what we all want in life. That's all we all strive for.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the fifth one, pratyahara. And then, do you want to know the sixth one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I should refer to my notes. Yes. Okay, so the sixth one, we start to get into the meditative practices. Okay, so the next one is called dharana. So dharana means concentration.
Yeah.
So when we sit cross-legged and then we sit like with our hands, either one hand or one palm in the other, or we sit in chin mudra with the hands on the knees, whatever meditative posture you assume, and then you close your eyes. Some people have guided meditation where people tell them step by step what to pay attention to, and in the hope that they can relax enough to go into meditation. And so we say, oh, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes now, bye. And then we go off into a room and we sit. So when we're sitting, we're not actually meditating. Okay, we're not doing dhyana, we're doing dharana. Okay,
Mm.
so dharana is we are trying to concentrate. All right. So what we're trying to do is, I don't know, do you practice, do you do meditation?
I try. Yeah, and
Okay.
I always get
And
confused between dharana and dhyana because I feel like I'm mostly in dharana, and dhyana is
yeah,
kind of like the deeper state where I guess I don't know if I reach there maybe for a bit. Yeah.
yeah. So uh, dharana is that practice where we're trying to bring our thoughts to one point and focus on one point. That's called concentration, right? When you're focusing on one thing and everything else is just dissolves away. So
Right.
that focus, one pointed focus, is called concentration. And so that's what we're doing when we're doing dharana. So after you do pratyahara, then you sit and practice dharana. And then when you are able to concentrate, now that's why I was careful to say trying to concentrate and
Mm.
not concentrate, because trying to concentrate is what we all can do. We are still not in control. I mean, I can't speak for you, I'm speaking for myself. I'm still not in control of my thoughts.
Yeah.
So thoughts just come and go, come and go, come and go. But then you're not able to concentrate if you get carried away by each thought that keeps coming, right? So that's not what I want to do. I want to focus on one thing, one thought. Okay. And this is where people focus on their Ishta Devata. Have you heard of this concept,
Yeah.
Ishta Devata? So you have one deity who you like. And people make fun of Hinduism. They're like, oh, you have like 1,000 gods, crore gods, whatever gods and all. Um, so, so
I
that's
think
the thing with Hinduism.
that's a
Hmm.
power, right, Sonali? I mean, I love it. Like for every issue, we have one deity, and I love to pray to like different gods, different mantras, different prayers, and I have like different altars. So I mean, really love and enjoy it. But also because we've seen it growing up. But a lot of people, yeah, they feel like really lost with so many gods around. Yeah, yeah,
So here's the thing. People, they say Hinduism is polytheistic, and they say like the Abrahamic religions are monotheistic. Like there are ideas there is one God, and then they say here you have the idea that there are many gods, but actually that's a misunderstanding, because actually in Hinduism it's not that we have many gods, it's that everything is God. Everything in this manifested, you both manifested and unmanifested, is God. There is only God. There is nothing but God. Okay, that's the idea. And that's why everything, a piece of wood, a snake, a monkey, an anthill, everything is worshipped, because everything is God. Everything is a manifestation of that one reality. Okay, so that's the idea. And then variety is the spice of life, and diversity is, without diversity we'll all perish. We need that. That's what humankind is coming to, that consciousness now. We are realizing that we need diversity in our food, in our culture, in everything we do. We need to be diverse. We need to preserve diversity, right? In our environment, nature, we need that, for our ecology to function. And so we know that that's the underlying principle of everything, that diversity we needed. And so we as people are also diverse. What you like, I don't like, and so
Yeah.
how can we worship the same God? So even if you and I both worship Shiva, your idea of Shiva will be different from my idea. Now,
Yeah.
Shiva has so many qualities and so many powers, but you like some qualities of him and some certain powers of him, and I may like some other qualities and some other powers, right? That's inevitable, right? And so, that in keeping with that diversity, we have, as a culture, we've developed this diversity even in our worship of the divine. And so
Mm.
we embrace, and that's why we embrace all religions and all cultures, because we see every form of worship, every form of the divine as divine. So we don't have that kind of distinction, your God and my God, everything is God. So
Mm.
that's the idea. And so Ishta Devata means like my version of Shiva, right? And like your Ishta Devata will be your version of Devi or whoever you want to worship.
Yeah.
And so and then that helps with concentration. Okay, and so these devatas, they're the reason why they have like sahasranamas. You'll see Lalita Sahasranama, Shiva Sahasranama, 1,000 names of the goddess, 1,000 names of Shiva. Each name has a meaning, a quality, describes something about them, some power of theirs or some quality of theirs. And so by reciting those sahasranamas, we get closer and closer to that deity, all those auspicious divine qualities of that deity. And so when we are doing dharana, trying to concentrate, if we concentrate on those qualities that appeal to us, then we're able to eliminate every other distracting thought that comes. Our focus becomes easily one pointed. That's the
Mm.
idea. And that's why all these gods, they have forms, and we have idols, right? They're not actually idols, they're murtis.
Yeah.
We should call them that. It's a non-translatable word. They're murtis, vigrahas. So we have the murti, so as to help us, because it's nice to say things like, oh, I don't believe in God and I believe in like goodness. Okay, so I say, okay, cool, but like if you want to sit and meditate on goodness, how are you going to do that?
Mm.
Okay, so the human mind, we only think in terms of names and forms. Every single conceivable thing, it has a name or a form and a name and a form. Okay, so we can't, the mind cannot perceive anything beyond that. And when we are working with the mind, trying to control the mind, bring the mind to some kind of semblance of equilibrium, so the mind doesn't control us, we come to control the mind. In order to gain that power to control the mind, we need to be able to focus on something that has a name and a form, so that the mind is able to be calm when it focuses on that one
Mm.
thing. And that's why we give our devis and devatas names and forms, and they have so many forms and so many names. So whatever appeals to you, you can focus on that. I can focus on Shiva sitting and meditating, like in Coimbatore there is that Adi Yogi, that huge thing, right,
Yeah.
statue. I can focus on that. Or if I think of Shiva, I can only think of Linga, and I can
Yeah.
only focus on that, the form of Linga. Or I can only focus on the crescent moon on his head. Or I can only focus on Ganga flowing from his tresses. Or I can focus on his dreadlocks. There's so much I can focus on. I can focus on his pristine body covered in ash. When I think of Devi, I can think of her beautiful eyes. I can think of her red form. I can think of her as a little girl, or I can think of her as a mother, as a universal mother. I can think of her as a beautiful young woman. There's so many things I can think of. And so when I'm thinking of all that, it calms me down. And
Yeah.
these are all positive things that I'm thinking of, right? So it's only going to affect my energy positively. And so that is dharana. And I
Mm.
deviated a little bit into talking about Ishta Devata, but that's
Mm.
why we have Ishta Devatas in Hinduism and all of that. It helps us in our personal spiritual growth.
Mm.
So in Hinduism, the idea is that every single human being has the power to self-actualize. So if Shankaracharya did it, it's not just Shankaracharya. You can also be Shankaracharya. Okay. So because of that, each human has that potential. Because of that, it's important to, like, that's why we have all these concepts, and it's important to have something that you can focus on, to be able to concentrate on. So that is dharana.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the next step after dharana is dhyana. So that's what we call meditation. So what is that dhyana? So dhyana is not something you can do. So dhyana is something that happens. Once you achieve that one-pointed concentration, and you're able to hold that concentration for a prolonged period of time, then dhyana happens on its own. You don't have to do anything. Now, I have never reached that stage. I'm still in the trying to concentrate stage. Okay, so
Yeah.
I can't speak for what happens, what it is, and all of that. I won't be able to go into it. But I know that that's the goal. When you're doing dharana, you want to be able to hold the concentration on one object, one form, one name, one idea, whatever it is. It's a name or a form. Even an idea will have a form. And you want to hold it for a prolonged period of time. And then, the divine takes over, divine intelligence takes over. And then
So,
you're able to meditate.
Sonali, even if we are at the stage, I know the last one is Samadhi, but before that, people can continue to function as they are in their normal lives, is it? With all of these in place.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing also. I was talking about our culture, right? So our culture is, it allows, unlike certain offshoots which expects you to live in a certain way, what it live in a strict, according to strict guidelines, what this does is it accommodates everybody. So you can still do dhyana, you can still do dharana while you're living, while you have a shop, and you're like, you're a merchant, you're a trader. You can still do that. You don't have to like renounce the world and go and live in the mountains wearing a langot. You don't have to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's accessible to everyone. But having said that, uh, people do go through different stages in life, and we don't just live one life. We are reborn, and the reason we are reborn is because our soul has to evolve. Okay,
Yeah.
and so as we evolve, we lose interest in material excitements. I mean, how much are you going to, like, you like jamuns, how many jamuns are you going to eat, right? You want money, how much money are you going to accumulate? Maybe this lifetime you become a billionaire. After become a billionaire, like, what are you going to do? Like, it's not going to give you very much. You realize that after becoming the billionaire. And then your soul is like searching again. It's like, okay, I didn't get what I'm looking for through this. Now I'm going to look. Maybe if I look in this direction, maybe I'll get it through this. So in the next lifetime, you have that ichha, you have that desire. So then you're reborn in that circumstance where you can live a certain life and achieve certain things, because your soul thinks that my ultimate goal can be reached through achieving this. And then you achieve that, like, maybe I want to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and then you become like Beyonce. Okay, in the next life you're Beyonce, everyone loves you. And then you realize, okay, everyone loves me, I'm so beautiful, and still I'm not satisfied. Okay, and then you're like, maybe in my next life I should be a nun, because I see all those nuns, they look so peaceful. So the next life you're born as a nun, and then you're sitting, I don't know what nuns do, they're like chanting all day, I guess. I don't know what they do, but they're doing their thing, like their sadhana, right? They're doing whatever sadhana they do. And then maybe deep in the nun's heart, they feel like, I never married, I never experienced that satisfaction of having a partner, having a family, that feeling of fulfillment somewhere deep inside. I mean, she may be enjoying what she's doing, her practices, but also somewhere that desire remains. And then she's reborn as somebody who falls in love, gets married, has children, has a dog, has a farmhouse, whatever it is that she wants. So like that, the soul keeps searching. So every lifetime is a process of searching. And then as we evolve, eventually we reach a stage where we realize, okay, none of this is going to give me what I want. And the only question I have to ask is, I have to go inward and ask, who am I? Where did I come from? What is the meaning of all this, right? Once you start asking those questions, then you start your life, you start to live a certain kind of life. Things that don't serve you fall away, right? So you let go of certain things, and then you start moving into maybe then you live a lifetime where you realize that I'm not interested in getting married. I'm not interested in having a job. I'm not interested in accumulating wealth. Maybe I just need to go be by myself and spend time introspecting, which is meditating.
One
Yeah.
question, Sonali, can there be a person who does follow all of these things but still finds themselves and feels satisfied, or do they have to be on their own to find the real answers?
Yeah, there are people who have lived perfectly normal, regular lives and have suddenly spontaneously self-realized. There are people, but that doesn't come like just like that. In previous lives, they have done the sadhana, they've done the work, and then they had this little small lingering itcha, this desire, and so they were born in this life as a doing whatever they are doing. But then once that karma is over, then they go back to that whatever all the sadhana that they did, all of the effect of all of that comes back. So even though we see people like I spoke about Shankaracharya earlier, from us, like he was from a small young age, little boy, he was already like self-realized. And even I spoke about Jaggi Vasudev also. He was just a teenager when he had like an awakening. So he was sitting in Chamundi Hills one day, and like just spontaneously he had an awakening. And yeah, and so it's not like he was doing yoga or anything, but then it's because of in the past life he was doing all sorts of intense spiritual practices. So yeah, it just accumulates from lifetime to lifetime. So even now, if you're just going to yoga class and that's it, and you don't have time for anything else or inclination or interest in it, I don't want to do meditation, man. I just want to do asana. I feel good. That's totally fine. That's absolutely fine. Okay, just do what feels right for you. Do what feels good for you, and don't worry about anything else. Because any good karma that you do, anything that touches your soul, makes your soul, your spirit soar, your soul is going to remember that. Okay, it's not going to forget. And so it's going to affect your future lives as well. So you don't have to do everything in this life. If you don't want to, do what feels right for you. Do what makes your heart happy, what makes you feel content.
Mm. Yeah, there is hope. Yeah. Um, yeah, and then I guess after dharana, then there is
Dhyana,
dhyana, and then samadhi, the last one, right?
samadhi. Don't ask me what is samadhi. I have never experienced it. I don't know.
I
I
mean,
only know samadhi happens.
yeah. I mean, what I have read or heard, Sonali, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that uh, obviously one thing is when you are, done and you kind of are done with this earth and you kind of die, and that's samadhi. But that's not the only samadhi that there is. You can be in samadhi while you're living as well. And that's kind of like in that state, I guess, where you were talking about the person has mm, have control over the senses or like control over the body. I don't know what state it is, but a person can also reach that while they're very much alive and living their lives. So yeah.
Yeah. When we die, we don't achieve samadhi. Yeah. If only.
But can we die and achieve samadhi or no? So there is this popular this thing belief, right? Like that's what samadhi
Yeah.
is. Where is that coming from?
It's not a belief, it's just people being kind. So they just want to say, oh, that soul was so good that they must have achieved samadhi when they left the body. But usually, when people leave the body, once they have achieved samadhi, they leave the body because they have no use for the body anymore. The reason we take bodies is so we live out certain karmas so that our soul realizes, okay, I'm satiated now. I've lived these many lifetimes. I've done all these things. Okay, पेट भर गया मेरा, हो गया. Okay, now I'm
Right.
going to move on. And then we don't take birth in a human form, or probably in Loka we don't take birth. And I don't know, there are other lokas where we take birth. I'm not sure about all of that. But a soul that attains samadhi, the soul knows when to leave the body. The soul no longer needs God. The karmas are all over and done, and then it leaves. So what is samadhi? Theoretically, I'll tell you what I think, what I know. I know that samadhi is when your individual consciousness unites with the universal consciousness. Okay. So actually, so have you heard of this idea Brahman?
Brahman or
Brahman means universe, but
oh, Brahman, no.
yeah, Brahman is the absolute reality, like with the capital R, and the truth of everything with the capital T. Okay, what sometimes is called God. Okay, that is Brahman. So Brahman has no qualities, no attributes, no form, no shape, nothing. It can't be perceived through the mind, and yet it pervades everything. It was never born, it will never die. Okay, it is eternal. So that eternal consciousness, and it is simply, if you were to describe it, then you describe it as Sat Chit Ananda. Okay, Sat Chit
Right.
Ananda we've heard. So Sat means truth. Like I said, it's the eternal truth. Okay, so Sat can also be translated as existence. Okay, so we know we exist, right? There's no denying that we exist. But what is existence? We don't know. We think existence means like the house I live in, the husband I have, the car I have, the job I have, the money I have. We think that is like that defines my existence, but like eventually we realize it doesn't. Like I may lose the money, I'm still me. I may get a divorce, I'm still me. I can get a better car, I'm still me. When I had Maruti 800, I was still me. When I get whatever fancy car, I'm still me. So that existence is never changing. So it's never changing, but we're so preoccupied with everything else that's changing that we forget the thing that's never changing. So once we what are the other qualities of the thing that's never changing? Chit in this context means consciousness. So we know we have consciousness. Like you, as a child, you would have asked this question: if I die, will I cease to exist? Like, what happens when we die? Like, am I going to stop perceiving things? Am I going to stop being conscious of things? Right? The answer is no. You're not going to stop being conscious of things, because consciousness has no death. Only the body has death. Consciousness has no death. Existence has no death. It was never born, it will never die. There is only consciousness. Everything is consciousness. Okay. And then the last thing is Ananda. Ananda, we know what that is. Bliss. Ananda is not pleasure. Pleasure is different from bliss. Happiness is different from bliss. Happiness is temporary. Pleasure is temporary. Bliss is eternal. So these three ideas, they are interlinked. Okay. And so that's why we're always, as people, we're always seeking happiness. We avoid things that make us unhappy, uncomfortable, sad. We always want to lean into anything that makes us happy. We're always chasing happiness, right? That is us chasing our true selves. We know somewhere very, very, very deep down that my true nature is happiness. So all of this that makes me unhappy is not real. It's not for me. This is not me. I don't want it. We know that. But we don't know how to access that true happiness. We're all our lives, we're searching for it. We're searching for it in this, in that, in that, in this, in this. Right? So that's what it is. So these three things, once if you were to describe Brahman, the experience of Brahman, you would describe it as this. Okay. And so in Samadhi, your Atman, Atma, right, are what we call the soul. So the soul is actually individualized consciousness, not the soul. The Atman is individualized consciousness. The idea of soul is a bit like over time it's become quite diluted and everyone has different ideas. But we'll talk about Atman as individualized consciousness. So if Brahman is universal consciousness, Atman is individualized consciousness. So you have an individualized consciousness, I have an individualized consciousness, my mother has an individualized consciousness, our body travels with that, we have different experiences with that. But that Atman, that individualized consciousness, is nothing but Brahman, universal consciousness, because everything that exists is Brahman. Brahman is existence. And through yoga practice, through Vedanta, we are able to come to a realization that, oh, my Atman is nothing but Brahman. You are no different from me. I am no different from a Palestinian. I am no different from Kamala Harris. I'm no different from a frog leaping from a lotus leaf into the pond. Everything is that one reality. So that is samadhi. When you come to that realization and you sit in that realization. So yeah, when people die, many things happen, but that doesn't happen. When a soul attains samadhi, then they realize, why do I need this body? I don't need this body. I can be free. So that's it. They've graduated. Over. But then when people die, that's not what happens. When people die, it's only the body, that physical body, that's dropped. But we have other bodies. We have a subtler body. We have several in yoga. We have they are called koshas, sheaths, sheath, sheaths.
Right.
So we have prana, for instance. We talked about prana. That's a subtler body. And then the mind is also a subtle body. It's also a body. So we can hurt each other's feelings just through words. We don't have to hit each other, we can hurt each other. It still hurts, right? Just like a physical wound. So what is that? That's our mental emotional body being wounded. And we carry those wounds just like we carry scars, right? So yeah, so there are many bodies, but not many. There are a few more bodies. And then the last one before that we reach the universal consciousness, called the causal body. Okay, so I talked about physical body, gross body, and then there is the subtle body, which has some sheaths in it, which is prana and the mind and all of that. And then there's the causal body, which is the final, the subtlest body that we have, and it's called causal in English. Uh, it's because that's where the record of our karmas are. Okay, right. So the soul carries our karmas, that causal, right? So that way the soul carries the karmas. And actually, when we go to sleep, when we go to deep sleep, are you aware when you're in deep sleep? Are you aware of your body? Are you aware of where you are? Sometimes we have really amazingly deep sleep. We wake up and the first thing is, where am I? Who am I? What is going on at this point in my life? It takes us a couple of seconds to update our minds. Okay, this is the moment I'm in right now. This is the body I'm in. This is the place I'm in, right? Okay, go. It's like a video game, downloading the video game. So, right? So when we go into deep sleep, we go into that, the consciousness goes into that causal body space. Over there are no thoughts. There is no body. There's no prana. There are no feelings. Okay, it's just, and that's the closest we can get while being alive to bliss, to that bliss that Sat Chit Ananda I mentioned. That's why when we wake up after deep sleep, we're like, oh, I had such good sleep. But you weren't even aware, right? How do you know you had good sleep? How do we know we had good sleep? These are questions yogis have asked. Yeah, so yes, so those are the three bodies. And so when we die, we're only dropping the physical body. All the rest is going. All the
Ah.
rest is still there. It's still there. And then if you're lucky, then you go into another human womb. Uh, and you take another birth. So you take another birth with the same mind. You may not be conscious, but you still have those thoughts that you've had all your life. Like if you have, they say your thoughts define your character, right? Your thoughts define your actions define your character. So if you've had the same kind of recurring thoughts over and over again, then it defines your personality. And then that personality, that strong definition that you have, it gets carried on. It doesn't get dropped off anywhere. It's just a physical body that you're dropping off. It moves on to your next life. That's why they say be very conscious of what you think, what you preoccupy your mind with, right? It defines you, and not only for this lifetime, for future lifetimes as well. And then you see people are born, they're child prodigies. There's a child born, they can play Mozart, whatever, they can play like classical music at the age of 3. Where did they get that from? It's not some miracle. In some past life, they've done the work, practiced. And so in this life, they've picked it up like that. The same with all the traits that we have, the things, the strengths we have and the weaknesses we have. It's just not random. Nothing is random in this universe. Everything has an order. So it's all come. And even the karmas, it's not like what happened in your immediate last life will be carried on to this life. It's not like that. So there are different kinds of karmas also. Am I going too deep into this?
No, it's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know of Prarabdha karma, Sonali. That's the karma you kind of are here to go through, right?
Yeah.
And then there is another
Yeah.
one that you can change.
So there is Sanchita karma, which is like the bank, your karma bank, and that will be stored in the causal body. Okay. And then there is Prarabdha karma. So Prakriti is so kind to us that she knows that if I dump all the karma in one lifetime, you just won't. I mean, imagine the karmas we're dealing with in this life only. Imagine if some people, they do like past life regression and all of that. And it's like, you can't even deal with stuff in this lifetime. Imagine going back to several lifetimes, dealing with the burden of all of that. Do you need to really know? No, Prakriti, there's a reason why Prakriti makes us forget. She only makes us pay attention to this set of karmas because she's like, you please deal with this first. And then, deal with this, then we'll move on to the next. So it's like that. It's rationed out.
Yeah.
And so there are many dormant, people when they go into their unconscious and all, there are many dormant things. Sometimes people meet with an accident, the wires get mixed up in their brains, and then they start speaking in languages that they were never exposed to, right? Where does all that come from? It's all coming from that bank, our unconscious things that we're not conscious of. It's all stored there. Some past life, they must have lived in that country, they must have spoken that language. So yes, so this is how the karmas play out. So yeah, when we die, it's not like we achieve samadhi, if only.
Yeah. Interesting. So then, how do we bring all of this together, Sonali, for a person who has no idea about yoga? I mean, what are some things that I mean, you have said a lot of things, but how does it change a person's life? What are the possibilities of yoga transforming someone's life?
That's a good question. Yeah, because these are all abstract concepts and they're so far out. Like they don't. I don't. It's difficult to relate to it, right?
Yeah.
So yes. So practicing yoga, one thing that it does is, the first thing is practicing asana and all. It makes you stronger, fitter, healthier, right? It prevents a lot of diseases. And it can cure a lot of diseases as well. Practicing yamas and niyamas, I didn't really go into it, but I guess people can research.
Yeah.
So practicing yamas and niyamas, it just makes you live according to dharma. So we talked about dharma, right? So what is dharma? Dharma is just the natural order of the universe. Okay,
Yeah.
so when we say something is adharmic, we're just saying it goes against the natural order of the universe. And what is the obvious end that it's going to meet? It's going to be destroyed, because if you go against the laws of the universe, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to go follow the laws of the universe. You are a part of the universe. And so that is dharma. So if you live according to those yamas and niyamas, then as it suits your lifestyle, you contextualize it as much as you can in your life. And if you live according to that, then you're living a dharmic life. And when you as a being follow the laws of the universe also reaches out to you and blesses you, right? You embrace the universe embraces you. So things start
Mhm.
working properly in your life. You become more happy, more content, more prosperous, and your life begins to have more meaning. Your life feels like you have more purpose and more meaning in your life. That is something that we lack, I think. My
Yeah.
generation, I see around me, we feel like, what's the point of this, right? Like, nothing that I'm doing means anything to me. I'm just doing it. I don't know why. So through yoga, it makes you more perceptive. It makes you realize why you're doing what you're doing, and it makes you start. It gives you the courage, the strength, and the means to be able to do what you want to do once you figure out what you want to do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it brings you closer to yourself. So, like
Mm-hmm.
I said, all of this, our true nature, I kept saying, right? Like Sat Chit Ananda, that's our true nature. So we don't have to go that deep, like all the way to 100. We can go up to even 2 and 3 from zero.
Yeah.
And even that is going to benefit our lives. So yes, so all of this, and then it just makes you more peaceful as a person. You start, you know, you start needing less from life, from the world, and you become more sensitive, not only to your own thoughts and your own deeds. You also become sensitive to other people's feelings, motivations, backgrounds. The world starts to make sense. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of our frustrations and anger and negative feelings and illnesses, it results in illnesses, comes from not not knowing what is going on. uh, we
Yeah.
we we Things don't make sense to us, and through the practice of yoga, slowly, gradually, things start to make sense. Your consciousness starts to expand. Lots of cool things also happen. Your mind becomes sharp,
Mm.
your skin becomes clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you look young and fit and hot for longer. And you stay sharp, uh, you become more, like I said, you become more sensitive, you become more intelligent, all of those things. And if you become sharper, you become more efficient at your job, and if you become more efficient at your job, you're able to earn more money, and so chain
Yeah.
reaction, you become more prosperous. And the thing is, it won't be an empty prosperity.
Yeah.
You'll be able to have a meaningful life. Like, what's the point of having all this stuff if you're not able to enjoy it? You'll be able to enjoy life, live more deeply, live more fully. So that's the initial, and I think the most important consequence of practicing yoga.
I think I love the word empty prosperity. It won't be that because all the things that you did mention earlier, how certain people or spirituality or some aspects of it kind of poo-poo, prosperity or money or just general growth in that sense. But I don't think yoga does that. Instead, yoga is more about being aligned with your own self, and then once you are aligned there, you will be prosperous. That has to happen. Like you are moving in that direction, right? It's part of the Sat Chit Ananda, right?
That's so true. Yeah, yeah. And we worship Lakshmi, right? There are Ashtalakshmis,
Yeah.
8 forms of Lakshmi. And so wealth is not just money. Wealth is also your progeny. Wealth is your spouse. Wealth is knowledge. So yeah, we appreciate so many kinds of wealth, and we welcome and worship all kinds of wealth as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, Sonali, remember when we were talking about this episode, you said we are just going to wrap up in 30 minutes. There's not going to be much. And we are well over an hour, and I'm so excited,
Yeah,
like, for all the
yeah.
information you shared. But just moving to the last segment, do you want to just talk a little bit about, your journey and like, I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired by you. Just to, I think you're talking about going to an ashram or like you've taken the course there. So how will it be, moving forward for you?
Yeah, so I don't know how it will be moving forward, but yeah. So I mentioned that before I moved to the US, I did this course, right? It was actually a teacher training course in yoga. I mean, it's a teacher training course, but really it was a yoga course. It was like an intensive yoga course where you learn what yoga is. You also learn how to teach. I've been teaching, like just before this, I taught my neighbors. I did a class for my neighbors, so I've been teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, yeah, as you practice, you'll want to share. Okay. And then you just go and tell people, and they'll be like, yeah, okay, shut up. Like they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
So one way that, that you fulfill that desire in you to share something that's really affected you positively is you teach people who want to learn. So that's one great way to do it. Yeah. So then I moved to the US, and like, I lived there, and I was teaching until the pandemic. I stopped after COVID hit, but I don't know. I just felt like it had just become so important to me that I sometimes felt like I was leading a double life,
Mm.
where I was with people and doing things that didn't matter as much as this secret thing. And I was with people who didn't understand the secret thing, why it's so important to me. And I also realized that if I expose this secret, like something that's so precious to me, the most important thing to me, people won't understand. You know, they'll only like understand to an extent, but they don't get it because they haven't experienced it. And I mean, okay, this is not going to happen to everyone. It just happened to
Mm.
me. Okay, it's not going to happen to you if you do yoga. You can totally like live your life and do yoga.
Yeah.
So totally normal. You're not going to become like me. But with me, I just felt like I was going deeper and deeper into it. And my heart was moving further and further away from my like profession. You know, so I was an artist. I mean, I guess I am an artist. And as an artist, we don't use the words, but actually it's a spiritual exploration. You're trying to find the truth. You're trying to go closer to the truth with the capital T, through this medium. You're exploring it through this medium.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that actually I have a medium already, and that's yoga. And it's like giving me proper tangible results. Like I take one step towards yoga, yoga takes 2 steps towards me. So why am I then like spending my time doing? So all of these pursuits that I had, they didn't mean as much to me anymore. They weren't giving me the answers that I was looking for. I became hungrier and hungrier, and it was not satiating me. And then I saw all
Mm.
the artists around me, my colleagues and everyone, and they were perfectly fine. This was it for them. And I realized you can't just be an artist and not have your heart in it. Your heart has to be in it in order for you to create something. And I was like, I'm just doing a
Mm.
disservice to society by occupying this space. Somebody more deserving can be in this space. I need to be in a space where my heart is happy. And so that's when I made that decision. And the thing is, it took years to come to this place, because your heart may be thinking something, But then you have all these attachments, like, oh my God, like, how can I live without this? I have to do this. Or like, I have to do that. I have to, you think of your life in a certain way. You have these plans, like I said earlier, right? Those patterns, you have those patterns, and it's difficult to step out of them because it's the great unknown.
Yeah.
So it took many years for me to drop the courage to take this leap, and it's really like a new life that I'm going to start soon. So I don't know what is to come, but
Oh,
all I know is this is what I need to be doing right
yeah. I think just having or developing that courage in itself, Sonali, can be so liberating because a lot of people just live their lives without that courage, right? And to do anything or to follow what they really want or to even know. So I think that in itself is worth, exploring yoga for. Yeah.
That courage didn't come from me. I really, I know that I am being guided.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, I have, there's so much reinforcement coming in. Once I started moving in this direction, I just got so much reinforcement, assurance, you know like everywhere I look, there's assurance. And
Wow.
every step I take, it's like, I'm being cared for. There's
Yeah,
some divinity that's taking care of me, and that's when I know that, okay, I can take the leap. Somebody will, catch
right.
me. It's
Yeah,
fine. So it's not something that I did. It's just
I
like
know.
happening.
Wow. Wow, Sonali, thank you so much for coming on this episode, for talking about yoga, for sharing your nuggets. I mean, this was such a wholesome episode. So, yeah, thank you. And do you have any parting thoughts?
I hope that I didn't make any mistake. Like, if I have, then please leave comments and correct me. I've
Yes.
spoken to the best of my knowledge, and I'm happy to be corrected if I need to learn something and unlearn something. And I hope that you got something from what I shared. And don't be afraid of yoga. It's what happened to me is not going to happen to you. You think like this is
I think what
all
has
one
happened to you is
thing.
beautiful. But yeah, I'm sure if people think that that's the only way, obviously that's not true. It can be different experiences for different people. Yeah.
To
Perfect.
me, it's like the ideal is, oh, I get to be in an ashram where, like, the only expectation out of me is to do sadhana, right? That's my
Yeah.
ideal. And I'm so naive. I just assume that this is the universal ideal. And the other day I was watching this interview, I think Kangana Ranaut interview, and somebody was saying, oh, the interviewer was saying, you're so spiritual and all of that. And he asked her, so you're just gonna one day up and go and sit in an ashram doing meditation? And she was like, hey Krishna, please don't make that happen to me, please don't make that happen to me. And I was like, she just said she's spiritual and she's saying I don't like to be in an ashram. And then I sat and thought about it, and I was like, you know what, like, don't be so naive and childish. There are so many people, so many kinds of spiritualities out there. And maybe she has a lot more ambition, she has a lot of things that she is meant to achieve in this life, karmas that she needs to play out. And
Mm,
so that's not her path. And then I also realized that, okay, actually my path is unique, because I don't, you don't think of yourself that way. Only when you
yeah.
contextualize with others, relate to others, then you realize. Yeah, so I just remembered that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, thank you so much, Sonali. And
Okay.
if anybody, I know you said that you don't want to you're not offering any of these things as such as of now for people to get in touch with you. But is there something that you're looking forward to in the future to connect with people or to teach or no?
Yeah, when I'm there, I will be teaching yoga asanas and all of that. Yeah, I will be, and I'll be trained by like very amazing teachers. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. All right, thank you so much, Sonali. And thank you everyone for being
Yay.
on this episode. Yeah. And I hope that people learn a lot about yoga and yeah. and leave comments if
Thanks for
there are
bringing
other
me
things.
on.
Yeah. Okay. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.